After the 76ers' Tyrese Maxey hit this remarkable shot in last year's playoffs, ardent Knicks fan Jerry Ferrara was full of praise on Twitter for the Sixers guard. Yes, that Jerry Ferrara, who played Turtle in the hit HBO series Entourage.
Tyrese Maxey is one of those guys that absolutely, like a Steph Curry, just terrifies me.
And as for Entourage, well, as you might expect, getting the part of Turtle was life-changing.
I didn't have a car until that point. I was able to afford a car, and I got rid of my roommate, and I lived on my own. Yes, it changed a lot. I was 23 years old.
Now 44, Jerry Ferrara talks Sixers Knicks, Entourage, and much more. Next on Fresh 24. Jerry Ferrara, New York City born, Brooklyn raised, an impressive TV and film career, of course, Turtle in Entourage, Joe Proctor in Power. You're about to be a podcaster, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a deli owner, you're a fitness advocate, you're also I'm sorry, something's caught in my throat here, a Knicks fan. Jerry Ferrara, welcome to Fresh 24.
It's good to be here. That was a great intro. I wish you would have got Knicks out there with a little more. I mean, we deserve it. We're pained. We're pained fan base.
We don't care. We don't care, man. This is Philly.
Oh, I know. I know you don't care.
We look north at you guys and south at Washington and just hope we have a place in this world. You know what I'm saying? That's the way we think.
I can't wait to revisit what we went through in May.
Well, we're going to revisit all the great things you've done in your career to this point. I'm interested in the fact that you lost a ton of weight at one point about, 10, 15 years ago. We'll talk about that. One of the reasons we're putting you on is because I know you like Tyrese Maxey. And I'm going to go back to Game 5, and let me just bring some people up to date. It's the first-round playoff series with the Knicks. Sixers facing elimination. They're down 3-1, 15 seconds to go. Josh Hart goes 1 of 2. So Sixer ball, no timeouts. Sixers down 3, and Maxey nails one from the logo, sends it into overtime. Sixers win there. Now, it delays the inevitable, of course, because the Knicks win Game 6 in Philly. But I know you got mad respect for Maxey. Were you there? Were you in the Garden for Game 5?
I was not in the Garden for Game 5. Unfortunately, I was not in New York. But, here's how I give my respect for basketball and most sports. I try to find the player, who terrifies me. Like in football, Tyreek Hill terrifies me as a fan, right? It's where is he on the field, located? Tyrese Maxey is one of those guys that absolutely, like a Steph Curry, just terrifies me. You don't want him to have the ball. You never feel good when the shot leaves his fingers as a fan. You're like, you don't even want him to get a shot off. So, I liked where we were at in that Game 5 spot. I liked him pulling up from the logo because low percentage shot, you would think, but wasn't surprised it went in. Wasn't completely shocked it went in. He's a great player. I knew a lot about him because it's crazy. The Knicks studied that whole team. They took, Emmanuel quickly. So I looked at Maxey a little bit as his teammate in college, but he's a great player. Great player.
At one point on social, you said about Maxey, and I quote, he's a beast, fastest guy I've ever seen in 35 years watching hoops. Now, 35 years of watching hoops, that time frame includes my man Allen Iverson. Is he actually faster than him, do you think?
I think maybe not with the ball, or maybe with the ball. I don't even know. But all I know is, and maybe it's the high def cameras we have now compared to what we had with AI. To me, to the naked eye, yeah, the guy's a blur. I think he's faster. I think he's a step faster. Iverson maybe was quicker, but
I know what you're saying. Like in a small confined space, the crossover and the dart to the rim.
Right, but if who gets to what spot quicker, I think Maxey gets to the spot quicker.
You were actually very active on social, engaging with Sixers fans during the playoffs. What was that like?
Dude, I actually talked about this, and I know we'll talk about my podcast at some point, but we did a mock show a couple of weeks back, and we were talking. Look, I go out of my way to not be unhinged on Twitter. Twitter is a interesting place, right? I love it for sports, but it could go really wrong. I was unhinged on Twitter like I've never been before during that series. And I will say, I've had awful things. This is no disrespect. I love Philly. I appreciate the fandom there. I've had mean things said to me on Twitter my whole entire career. There's been Twitter accounts talking about I should never have had an acting career. All the stuff that Sixers fans said to me it never bothers me. Nothing bothers me. I laugh at it. I share it with my wife. I go, look how funny this is. The stuff that Sixers fans were saying to me, I was genuinely hurt. My feelings were hurt. They hurt my feelings.
Well, but wait a second. I mean, New York fans, they could be a little bit rough too. Do you think Sixer fans are worse than Knick fans?
It's hard to say because I've never felt the wrath of a Knick fan, right? And I don't really do that as a fan. Like, I could be snarky, but I don't go pure. Like, I'm just going to try to find the thing that can hurt your feelings the most and say it. I suppose you could make the argument it's pretty even between Knicks and Sixer fans or Philly and New York fans. But then you factor in, like, Eagles fans, definitely way different than Giants fans. I give Philly the crown of, like, fan that and I've ran into a lot of Philly fans since that series. They all said, yeah, during that series, I hated you. So Philly for me has the crown of like sports fans I would least want to tussle with.
Also on Twitter, you reacted to something that the Sixers' Kelly Oubre was quoted as saying about Celebrity Row at Madison Square Garden. What do you remember him saying, and what was your reaction? Do you recall?
Well, yeah, I remember him saying, oh, yeah, all those $100,000 seats that the celebrities go to, they don't even care about basketball. Couple of things. And I don't know exactly what I said, but it had to be something to the effect of, now, look, I don't like to classify myself as a celebrity. That feels wrong to say, but I have been fortunate enough to sit in those seats. First of all, they're not $100,000. That's ridiculous. They're not $100,000, Kelly.
But they're on their way to being $100,000.
At some point, they will be. Maybe in 2045, they'll be $100,000. They're not $100,000. But look, I know, yes, they're during, a Hornets game, maybe on a Tuesday, there might be some people there that are more interested in the social part. But you're talking about some playoff games. That was Knick fans. Go talk to Tracy Morgan. Go talk to Ben Stiller. Go talk to Spike Lee or Chris Rock, the Knicks celebrity. Like, they're there for basketball. They're not there for all the hoopla. And I thought I thought he and Paul Reed just like, why? I just don't know why. You're getting ready to go into a playoff series. Why say anything? Just be fake nice. Even if you hate it, like that's what I would, not that I'm some big athlete, but even with be fake nice. Why give anyone just an itch to be that more belligerent at a game? Just be fake nice. I thought they made a mistake there.
Right. Listen, the East is no joke. The Sixers, of course, beefing up their roster, and the big prize over the summer was Paul George. Listen, what do you think Sixers and Knicks and how they stack up against, say, Boston, Milwaukee? They have to be considered the favorites, right?
Well, I'm going to say something. I wonder if you agree. I think that everyone in Philadelphia should be rooting hard for their West Coast brethren in the Los Angeles Clippers. Because if it's not for the Clippers sort of botching the situation with Paul George and making it even available for him to leave, the Sixers sort of strike out in free agency with all that money they had available. I'm not saying strike out, but they don't land some cornerstone piece that could really help them compete. I thought that saved their offseason, and it absolutely terrified me as a Knicks fan now that I have to deal with that. If healthy, Paul George is a monster. Until the Paul George thing, I was discounting the Sixers. I like the way the Knicks stack up with Boston. Boston is such a juggernaut, though. Honestly, they really are. We could say, oh, we match up great. They won the championship pretty effortlessly. It was never really in doubt for them. And I know they had an easy run in the East. Everybody was hurt, so it'll be a lot different. But I like the way we both stack up against Boston. And I do think that we will hear from Giannis in Milwaukee as well.
Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau have really combined to make great things happen in New York. The Knicks are now a contender, let's face it. And they've done it with Villanova players, and now they have 4 of them. They traded for Mikal Bridges. Of course, they gave up a ton, including a bunch of first-round picks. Do you think it was worth it?
Absolutely. You can't have it both ways, meaning, at least for Knick fans, it was, we have no picks. We have no picks. Phil Jackson screwed us. We have no picks. Then Leon Rose goes and acquires a boatload, a war chest of picks, and we didn't spend them on DeJounte Murray. We didn't go in on Zach LaVine whenever that was. We didn't go in on anyone, and the picks are just sitting there. So then it becomes, what are we going to do with these picks? We got all these picks. We got to do something with it. I thought if you were going to do something with the picks, that was the thing to do. Ultimately, look, I love draft picks. I've lived through a team not having picks. It's a pretty crappy thing to be bad and not have picks. I thought the Nets handled their situation very smart by getting their picks back. Now they can go be the worst team in basketball and hope that they get the 12.5% lottery bounce. Look, I don't worry about the picks now. You could talk to me about the 2029 pick and the 2030. Sure. Yeah. 7-8 years from now, it could be a big problem not to have a first round pick. We'll worry about it then. But for now, if everything goes right, those picks are in the 20s. Good luck. Go try to strike gold with the 25th overall pick. Maybe you can. But so I love it. I love the move.
What is it about Villanova players do you think the Knicks like so much?
Well, look, first and foremost, I think they like Jaylen Brunson, right? They loved him in Dallas. Talk about all the takes about that signing. My favorite thing to do is go back and watch that highlight reel someone on Twitter assembled about everyone saying the Brunson thing was such a mistake and how could you give that guy that money, all that. I love revisiting that because you're uninformed if you thought it was going to be that bad and that money was going to be terrible. Now it's the best contract in sports, arguably. And then, you go acquire Josh Hart. And from day one, even though he's not from New York, that felt like a very Knicks player. So then you go acquire DiVincenzo and it just fit. They are doing the rare thing is that they're all really good players in their own right, but together as a team, the sum is greater than all the parts. And I think they're putting team first. I think it's hard to get some of these guys who have been the best wherever they've gone to put team ahead of their own interests. And I think that's what the Nova players do more than anything. They'll win ugly. They'll win pretty. They'll win high scoring. They'll win low scoring. They'll win in overtime. Doesn't matter. Just win.
Yeah, I think you make some good points. And I think Jay Wright is just amazing in terms of the kinds of players 2 national titles for the guy. And when you're a Villanova player, and listen, I'm a Temple guy, but I got to admit, when you're a Villanova player, you know how to play the game on both ends and you understand the importance of unselfishness. But listen, I don't want to belabor that. I got to move on here. I don't have you for forever. I just have you for a limited amount of time. Some famous or infamous moments in Knicks history. One that I'm not even sure you remember if you were old enough. I think you started to be a Knicks fan when you were 9 or 10, but in '89, the Knicks sweep the Sixers. The first round then was a best of 5. I don't know if you remember this or not. They come into Philly. Okay, so they win game 3, and Charles Oakley and company grab a broom. Charles Barkley's laying on the floor in disbelief, and they're literally sweeping around him. Do you remember that as a kid?
I do, and I remember it being hilarious, but also wondering, like, okay, are the Knicks does this mean, like, because I was so young, I'm like, does this mean the Knicks are the best team in basketball? Like, I didn't quite fully understand how long the playoff run was going to be, and really that the Knicks were not going to win the title in '89. But I do remember that. That's an iconic move. It doesn't get talked about enough about, you know what? I got to find that clip and circulate that because that does not circle Knicks Twitter a lot. And I think it needs to be out there for the youngins. It's a good pull.
Let me also remind you, May of '95, you know where I'm going here. Reggie Miller, 8 points in 9 seconds. Pacers come roaring back to beat the Knicks at the Garden. Were you there for that one?
I was not there for that one. I was 14 years old. I remember watching it. I kind of watched the games alone, Mark. Even like this playoff series, the playoff series versus the Sixers, I would get the kids to bed. I would let the first quarter go and have it recorded and start and like fast forward. And I'm like locked in. I'm wearing the same clothes if it worked. that series, I watched the Reggie Miller game alone. But my friends and I in Brooklyn, we'd always then meet up in the park and go play hoops. That was like an afternoon game, if I recall, late afternoon. We were gonna go play hoops after. I was like getting dressed at that point. Knicks won. It's over. I'm like getting my ball. Told my mom I'll be back for dinner, and then I'm watching, and that all unfolds. And you know when people say my mouth was open, like my mouth dropped, and I walked to the park stunned. Like, you know, I've never really been at a loss for words, as you could probably tell. I could talk. I was stunned. And I've met Reggie Miller. I've had the pleasure of meeting him. Really nice guy. I cannot bring myself to like him. I thought it was insane that they brought him to call that game in the second round. Who thought that was a good idea? And Josh Hart had one of the best moments of the playoffs when he went up and reminded Reggie, just want to make sure you know what the crowd's telling you.
Speaking of Josh Hart, you recently went on a podcast with both Josh and Jaylen Brunson, and you told a story about a native son of ours, Kobe Bryant. What was the story?
The story was, with Entourage, we were lucky that and not a lot of shows did this at the time, and I don't think a lot of shows have done it since. We've shot at a lot of live events. We shot at the U2 concert, we shot at the Cannes Film Festival, and we would shoot courtside at Laker games, and we were doing a scene, and Staples Center was like happy to have us at the time, but they also didn't want us to interrupt the game. But we get to Staples Center early for our rehearsal. It's like 4:00, games at 7:30. Kobe was actually injured for this game, so he wasn't going to play. So bummer for us. We were going to miss Kobe, but it's 10 people in the whole arena. We're doing our little rehearsal. Kobe comes out and sweats. I think he had a leg injury, so he's kind of like limping around. He's shooting off of one leg, and he starts throwing up half-court shots, and he's making a few, missing a few, and then he basically comes over. First, I don't even know if he knew who we were. He came up to us. He was like, half-court lefty, $100 a shot, and there's 4 of us, so we're like, yeah, great, go. So he goes over, shoots a couple. Now he's missing. Remember, it's lefty, and he's on a bad leg, and he's not missing by a lot. So finally, it gets to like the 5th shot, and he's like, one more. Throws it up. I mean, this thing rattled in and out, Mark. And then we kind of celebrate, and he just storms off the court. And we all look at each other and try to figure out, is the best part of the story that we watched Kobe do it, or is the best part of the story that he stiffed us on like the $500? We don't even know. So later, the game starts. We're shooting. We're locked into what we're doing. TV timeout. We're in between takes, and I think it was an equipment manager, or maybe it was an assistant of Kobe's, comes during the step, 20,000 people in the arena, and peels off $500 bills to each of us. And I think I might still have one of them that I refuse to spend. And just I've had a few Kobe interactions, and that's one of my favorite stories. And he was one of my favorite players, obviously. And I lived in LA 20 years, so I know how the people of LA feel about Kobe. And I can only imagine how the people of Philly feel about him.
Yeah, no, he's one of ours, and we miss him to this day. All right. Listen, we're going to veer away from basketball as much as I hate to. We're going to talk about, you being Turtle in the HBO comedy Entourage, your deli business, losing 60 pounds. I'd love to know how you did that. But first, my friend, it is now halftime. And the first part of our halftime is being brought to you by Garage Beer. It's the Garage Beer 6-pack of questions. Garage Beer, beer-flavored beer. Find some near you at drinkgaragebeer.com. Here you go, bro. I'm going to give you a choice between 2 Philly things. Put your Philly head on, all right?
Okay.
And you just blurt out the answer. Don't think about it. Just blurt.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Cheesesteak or soft pretzel?
Soft pretzel.
Center City or South Jersey?
South Jersey.
Gritty or Philly fanatic?
Gritty.
Meek Mill or Hall & Oates?
Meek Mill.
I think I know the answer to the next one. Dr. J or Allen Iverson throwback?
Oh, Allen Iverson.
See, I figured it'd be Doc because he's a Long Island guy, but what do I know? Liberty Bell or Rocky Steps?
Rocky Steps.
All right. The 6-pack of questions brought to you by Garage Beer, beer-flavored beer. Find some near you at drinkgaragebeer.com. And now, from my music library, a handful of artists, you tell me if you have them in your library. Are you ready?
Yes.
ZZ Top.
Yes.
Jay-Z.
Yes.
U2.
Yes.
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yes.
Bruce.
Of course.
Batting 1,000. Well done. Jerry Ferrara. Who are some of your go-tos, musically speaking?
I go all over. Like, when I really need to, I like to reminisce when I'm listening to music. My friends and I in Brooklyn always knew, like, we'd be listening to like Biggie saying, one day this is going to be considered oldies, right? So I really do like to go back to old school hip hop, Biggie, Tupac, Nas. All like I like the new stuff today. I do, but that's where I'm an old head. Like, you cannot top that era. You just can't. And it brings me back to a simpler time in my life when I had not a care in the world and not a responsibility on the planet other than just not getting myself injured.
Right. Listen, Jerry is the voice or the former voice of an NBA team. A lot of people, they always want to know how I broke in. So how'd you break into acting?
Broke into acting, not a common job where I grew up in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn in the 90s for sure. But I always knew I wanted to do something in film and television. And I could have easily been an editor and been just as happy as well as acting. I did a play in New York off Broadway, which an LA agent saw me in, told me, come to LA, kid, you'll go places. And I thought that was, BS. I went to LA for a week to visit, scope it out, signed the papers, came home, told my mom I'm moving to LA. And 6 months later, I was on a plane, moved to LA, and I immediately was thrown into actor life, working in a restaurant, auditioning. And the thing that really broke me was I did this independent film called Cross Bronx in New York that did well at film festivals. And that is the movie that Mark Wahlberg and Steve Levinson saw, that they brought me in for Entourage based off of that. And then my audition process with Entourage started.
All right, so let's go to that. 2004 was the big break. Salvatore Turtle Assante in the HBO comedy drama Entourage. For the uninitiated, it's the story of a fictional A-list actor and his childhood friends who navigate Hollywood. The Turtle character evolves from driver and errand boy to a success story of his own. First, was it nice just getting a regular check?
Yeah. There's a few different steps with TV back then. First, it's getting the part, and then you shoot the pilot. Then you got to wait to find out if they pick up the pilot. I kept my job in the restaurant after we shot the pilot. I got paid a decent amount of money, more money than I ever made in my life, to shoot the pilot. And then it was like 5 months until we found out if HBO picked us up. So I was still working in the restaurant because in my mind, I don't think they're picking it up. And then, they pick up the show, and I forgot the original question because I'm literally in my mind reminiscing being back to that point. But yeah.
Was it nice just getting a steady check?
Changed everything. It changed everything. I don't come from a lot of money. Not that we weren't like really poor, but we certainly weren't middle class by any stretch. So I didn't have a car until that point. I was able to afford a car, and I got rid of my roommate and I lived on my own. Yes, it changed a lot. I was 23 years old.
Wow. Mark Wahlberg's career, of course, was the inspiration for Entourage, and the character Turtle was based upon actually his real-life assistant, a man by the name of Donnie Dunkey Carroll, who unfortunately passed away at 39. It was around 2004 when he passed. This is when I guess you guys filmed the pilot. Did you happen to meet him?
I did meet him during before we shot the pilot. I will say yes, Turtle was definitely part Donnie, but there was a few different guys as well. A part of Marc's crew, part of Doug Ellen, our creator's crew, that kind of made up the character. But yeah, I did have the chance. We met a lot of Marc's friends back then, and Marc did a really good job of, one of the craziest things before we shot the pilot, maybe it was, or before we shot the second episode after we got picked up, he took us on a private plane to Vegas to an HBO fight. I mean, I not only have I not been on a private plane, I think I've only flown coach like 5 times in my life at that point. I remember pulling up to this private airport. I don't know how to fly private. Like, I'll just give him the tail number. I'm like, what's the tail number? I pulled in. I didn't know what I was doing. It was terrifying. But that was an interesting weekend, and we certainly came back after that weekend ready to pretend like we were best friends for life.
Somebody was quoted as saying you're the exact opposite of the Turtle character. If that's the case, how do you get into character? How does an actor do that?
Look, it wasn't like I was, trying to play Abraham Lincoln, right? Like Daniel Day-Lewis, where I had to do all this research or anything like that. But Look, I think I'm way more reserved. I'm way more thoughtful before I speak. I definitely don't subscribe to like the 1 out of 10 rule with women. Like if you hit on 10 women, one is bound to say, "Yeah, sure, I'll hang out with you." Like I always assume that I'd go 0 for 10. So for me, it was more so really focusing on, look, I know you, Jerry, wouldn't say this joke or this thing to this woman or this thing, but it's not you. And I had a few people in my life who I grew up with. The Salvatore Assante part of the name, it's not that I based him off my friend, but I did have a friend who I grew up with. He did pass away, unfortunately, at a young age as well. But he always reminded me of like, this is who Turtle is. Like he was the life of the party. And that's sort of what I did. It was more so just about fun and loyalty with those guys.
So, Turtle Asante's first name in the series was Sal. That wouldn't happen to be the friend that you're talking about?
Yeah, to
Mhm.
this day, still one of the most generous things anyone ever did. I used to always joke with Doug Ellen, our show creator, when's Turtle getting a real name? And he would always say, like, season 6. I don't think he ever thought we'd get to season 6. But one day, this is back when you get a physical script delivered to your house. I get the script like I always did, and I'm reading it. And it was my scenes with the Jamie Lynn Sigler character, and she calls me Sal. And I like dropped the script because remember, my buddy had already passed away at this point. And I called Doug, and I never asked him to do that. He knew the story with my friend. He just did it.
Mm.
And it's something that I think meant a lot to my friends. And I've spoken with his family over the years, and I think they think it's pretty cool. So it's kind of cool that he's immortalized. If you go to IMDb, it says Salvatore Turtle Assante. That was my best friend, Sal.
Wow. Love it. So from 2015 to 19, you play the attorney Joe Proctor in the Starz TV series Power. Were you bummed when they finally killed you off?
Yes. I was prepared for it, or at least I thought I was. Everyone on that show does catch a bullet usually at some point. It's what makes the show great. Your favorite character could be taken from you. It's like the Game of Thrones effect. I made it pretty far, almost to the end, the final season with only a few episodes to go. But it is a letdown when you get that call from Courtney Kemp, who's the showrunner, and it's kind of like Hard Knocks when they release a player and they tell the player, bring your playbook. The player's getting cut. She's like, come to my office, bring your script. I'm like, oh, is it happening? And I went in and she's like, yeah, we're going to kill you next episode. I'm like, oh, shoot. So, yeah, because then you have like this table reading and they let you say a few words and everyone claps for you. It's like your own funeral. You're watching your own funeral.
Well, yeah, you have a new podcast. It's called Throwbacks. It's with Matt Leinart, who was an NFL quarterback, but a highly decorated college quarterback at USC. A ton of awards, including the Heisman Trophy. First of all, what brought you guys together?
Yeah, it's a fun story because if you go back 20 years when Entourage started, he's winning a Heisman, and he's arguably, I don't know if you could say it's the best college football team ever, but definitely one of the most acclaimed, and probably one of the most covered college football teams of all time. And we could have easily been friends. We were both in LA. We were probably going to the same clubs and stuff, but we hadn't met. And when I've been in podcasting since 2012. I don't know if you could tell by now, I love talking sports. So I wanted to get back into it, and his name came up. And it just so happened I was stumbling on his Instagram where he's making this funny content about being, he has a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and an 18-year-old. And someone said, what about doing it with Matt Leinart? I said, I think we have good dynamics. He's from LA. I'm from New York. He's a decorated football player. I'm kind of semi-decorated actor, you could kind of say, maybe. And we're both in very similar places in our life, but have had completely opposite paths. And at the end of the day, we're brought together by sports and family life. And that's kind of how it happened.
So what's it about?
Sports mainly. Like that's what we're gonna be talking about, right? Like we did a mock show last week just to button up a few things, and of course we talked about some of our NFL picks. And Matt does the Fox show, Big Noon Kickoff for college football, so he hits the road today. He's going to West Virginia. He's doing West Virginia, Penn State. So I'm gonna go to some of the college campuses, and we're gonna do the show from there a few weeks, and then we'll do it in LA and remote. But yeah, it's like we're going to do current stuff, but then also, next thing you know, Matt starts telling this story about, let me tell you about the time when like Sebastian Janikowski almost killed me. And it's like, all right, I'm here for that. Let's continue. So we both have some really good stories, and we're not giving you X's and O's. That's not that's what Matt can do. But I just need someone to talk sports with, and he's a great guy to do it with.
You're a deli owner, and 15 years ago, you lost 60 pounds. So I'm thinking deli, like deli food, like the kind of food that you eat in a deli, not necessarily healthful. I mean, not that I avoid it. I'll eat it every once in a while. But at the same time, you lost 60 pounds. You became this health advocate. How do you reconcile the fact that you're selling deli food and you lost 60 pounds?
Well, I am out of the deli business now.
Is that right? Okay, thank you.
Well, look, but I was a part of it for a very, very long time. Yeah, the losing weight thing, I got pretty unhealthy there on Entourage. I hit like 203 pounds at one point. I'm only about 5'6", Marc. I'm not a very big guy. So, but it worked for the show, worked for Entourage at the time, but it wasn't so much like I want to look better as I wanted to feel better. So I have a very addictive personality, but fortunately I've been able to get addicted to like decent, like my worst addictions are like golf and video games, not the worst. And I got really addicted into like health and working out. What's tricky now, Marc, is I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and it's way harder. I have put on 10 of the 60 pounds that I've lost back. So I can't say I'm some beacon of health right now, because I'm finishing the kids' mac and cheese. Not that we make the mac and cheese a lot, but it's hard with the little ones to stay in shape.
I hear you, bro. Parenting, good luck with that. Good luck with the new podcast. I won't wish you good luck with the Knicks, but I'll be thinking about you when the Sixers take the court against the Knicks this year. And above all, thanks so much, Jerry Ferrara, for joining us here on Fresh 24.
Marc, I enjoyed this. If you can't tell, I love specifically to talk hoops. So you may have to come on mine. Maybe we'll do a home and home. I'll come back on yours. You come back on mine, because this Knicks Philly thing, I think this could be a thing. We might see each other again.
Awesome, bro.
We might have to talk again.
Awesome, bro. Love to do it. Thank you again.
All right, man.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of Fresh 24. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Check out our friends over at Philadelphia Sports Nation, a local Philadelphia sports site covering your favorite teams across blogs and social media. PHLSportsNation.com. Philadelphia Sports Nation, PHL Sports Nation, enhancing your Philadelphia sports fan experience.